YouTube friends. It is Letty Tippins. Welcome to my channel. First of all, I want to let you know that my channel's name has changed. I don't know what I did. I changed emails from a Yahoo email to a Gmail account, and it knocked down my channel name. And when I went to fix it, it's telling me that I can't do it for 90 days. So I guess I'm going to have to, and all I can do is just leave it the way it is now. So my channel name now is just my name, Letty Tippins, and that's okay. In this video, I am going to share with you my life in Brooklyn as a child and all the things that I experienced in Brooklyn, which were great. I had a really, really good time in Brooklyn. In the last video, I explained to you about when we left Cuba in 1960 and all the turmoil that we went through and everything that was happening in Cuba at that time. They were executing people on the street in public. They were arresting people, torturing them. It was terrible. It was a terrible, terrible ordeal. And for an 8-year-old, it had to have been even worse. My parents never wanted to talk about it once we moved here. So it was kind of, you know, let's forget about it and pretend it never happened. But that's really not good for the psyche. But that's what happened. So after we got to Manhattan, to the uncle's house, 45 days later after being in Manhattan, my mother got a telegram telling her that her mother had been in an accident and that she was in critical condition. So my mom had to fly back to Cuba, and they left us with a cousin that didn't speak English. She was born here in the United States. I didn't even know her. And it was a little bit traumatizing because I wasn't told where my mother was, and I spent every day crying, wondering why my mom had abandoned me. And although my cousin was a great lady and she took excellent care of me, it didn't make up for the fact that I didn't know where my mother was. You know, it's something that you shouldn't do to a child. But back then, people just, at least people from my parents' generation, didn't think that it was good to tell kids when things like this happen. So I wasn't told. Here I'm at this strange lady's house that I didn't know, but I do have two good memories. One of them is her husband was a merchant marine, and he would bring her perfumes from all over the world, and she would let me play with them. I would put perfumes on. I would put them on my dolls. I just used to have a ball with those perfumes, and the bottles were so pretty. And she would just let me play with them. And some of them were very expensive, but I think about it now, and she probably had so many that she probably didn't care. And another memory I have of her was the first morning when I woke up at her house, and she served me a bowl of Cheerios. I had never had Cheerios in my life. I didn't know what they were, and I saw these little round things floating in white milk, and I didn't like white milk. My mom always gave me either chocolate milk or café con leche, which is milk and coffee, because in Cuba you did give your children that, although we know now that that is a big no-no, but they did, and I loved it. And so I started crying when I saw those little round things floating in my bowl. And but she was so nice, and she made me, the breakfast in Cuba was just a piece of bread, like an Italian bread, but we called it Cuban bread, toasted with butter and café con leche, which is what they call a latte here in Starbucks. But she did fix it for me, and she was wonderful, and I ended up staying with her, I think about a month, because then my mom was having trouble getting back out of Cuba, and that was just a disaster. And then from there, we did move to Brooklyn. We moved to Brooklyn 7, the corner of Hinsdale and Newport. I'll never forget. And we were living in a tenement, and it was an all Hasidic Jewish neighborhood. There were regular progressive Jewish people as well, but it was mostly Hasidics. And they were from Russia, so they were very kind to us. They were compassionate because they knew why we had left Cuba, the same reason why they had left Russia. So we had something in common. And I think that, you know, I was fortunate to be able to learn about their culture. All my friends were Jewish. The older Jewish people, especially the Hasidics, from Friday night sundown to Saturday sundown, they can't do anything. They can't work, they can't do anything. So they would pay me, I don't know how much, maybe a nickel or a quarter, whatever it was at that time, for me to come into their homes and turn off their lights or turn on their lights. And I used to do that, and I used to think it was really neat, because then I would take my little money that I had made and I'd go to the candy store and buy Bazooka bubble gum. Remember Bazooka with the little cartoon in it? Yeah, that's what I would buy with my little earnings. Unbelievable. But so I had a lot of good times in Brooklyn. My aunt took me to the RKO Theater, which is owned by the Rockefeller family or the Rockefeller Foundation or whatever it is. And I got to see the Rockettes. And if you're my age, you probably know who they are or heard of them. And it was a wonderful opportunity because the Rockettes were just absolutely divine how they danced. They would be so synchronized that sometimes it looked like it was just one person. They were just beautiful, and I never forgot that. It was just a wonderful experience that I was very fortunate and lucky to be able to have that experience. Also, while living in Brooklyn, my dad used to take us to New York City all the time, and we got to go to the Statue of Liberty, and we got to go to the Empire State Building, we got to go to the Rockefeller Center, we used to go ice skating at Central Park. In New York, it's so easy to go places because you just go by subway. You know, you get on the subway and you can travel the whole city by subway. You don't need a car. So my dad used to take us on his day off. He'd always take us and show us around. And so I'm very fortunate because I got to go to a lot of places in New York. One summer also I got to go to Connecticut. We had family in Connecticut, and I got to spend the whole summer in Connecticut. They lived out in the country, and they lived near a lake, so I got to go to the lake every day. And, you know, living in the city, being cooped up in the city, it was so nice to be able to be out in the country again and to breathe fresh air. I remember I really enjoyed it, and I loved it. I think I was maybe 11 or 12 when I got to do that. You know, I have nothing but fond memories. I went to a Catholic school. I used to have to take the subway. I used to have to walk like 2 or 3 blocks to the subway, and then go about 2 subway stops to Canarsie, and that's where the school, it was called Holy Family School. It was a Catholic school, and that's where I went to school. And then I would have to take the subway back, my brother and I. My brother was a year and a half older than I was, and so we got to go to school on the subway and back. And it was treacherous in the winter because these nuns did not allow us to wear pants or leggings or anything. We had to wear a skirt, the uniform skirt, with knee socks, and our thighs would freeze. And you know, if that would have happened to me today, I would have told those nuns to shove it. But back then, you know, you were taught to be respectful and obedient, and you did what you were told, even though you froze to death. And it was a different time. Good, fond memories. I had a lot of good friends there, both Jewish and Catholic. Didn't matter. They were just kids. We were kids, and they were my friends. And I used to play double dutch on the street. If you're my age, you probably know what double dutch is. And sometimes I got really good at it, actually. And sometimes there would be 2 or 3 of us double dutching at the same time, and it was great. You know, it was really great. Also, another fond memory, I don't want to forget this one. The fire department would come on a real hot evening or late afternoon, and they would turn on the fire hydrants, and it would flood the streets. And the kids were able to play in the water, and it was so refreshing and so much fun. And they would do that at least one time in the summer, every summer. And we just looked forward to that. We couldn't wait for the fire hydrants to be open so that we could swim. It would almost create a little lake because it would flood the street. And it was just a wonderful time. So those are the good times. We had bad times too, but I was so young, and my parents always sheltered me, so I really don't remember any bad times. My dad did, I think when I was 11 or 12, he ended up getting a job at the Playboy Club, Hugh Hefner's Playboy Club. Yeah, he worked there as a cook, and he made decent money there. And then in 1965, when they opened up the Playboy Club in Los Angeles, he asked for a transfer, and that's how we ended up in California. But I went several times to pick him up at the Playboy Club with my mom, and I got to see a little bit in, and I got to see the bunnies. And one day I told him that when I grow up, I want to be a bunny, and that was the last time they ever let me go there. I was never allowed to go there after that. So, but the bunnies were incredibly beautiful. They were handpicked by Hugh Hefner. And yeah, I consider myself very lucky because I've been exposed to so many things, and the best times are yet to come, because when we moved to California, that's when things got good and heated up, because I was then entering my teenage years, and there was so much going on in California at that time. The hippies and the war in Vietnam, and all the protesters, and all the, I mean, there were just so much going on that I have a lot of stories to tell you about that, but that'll have to be another time. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your comments. Please leave me more comments. Any questions that you have about Brooklyn, I will be more than happy to answer them if I can. And I hope to see you again in the next video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the bell so you'll know when my next video is coming up. So may the sun shine on you today and every day. I love you. Bye-bye.